Okay, under your daily activities, you will find your enter and approve daily invoices activity. By clicking on this activity, you will then find that you have multiple tabs to choose from. On the days that you receive your Reinhart orders, you will click on the Reinhart orders to review your Reinhart order. Ensure that any modifications that need to take place, and then convert the invoice from shipped to invoiced and saving the PO and generating an invoice. By clicking on this particular activity, it will bring up the existing Reinhart orders that are in the system. Once you get to the start screen, you want to ensure that you have all documents checked, that you have the correct date range that you're going to look at checked, as well as you want to make sure that all documents are checked in the grayed out box. If all documents are not checked, you can simply click the check mark, change it to all documents, and feel free to check the force B2B import as well. What the B2B stands for is business to business. Reinhart is the only company currently that we work with that automatically is tied to us from a business to business where their invoice electronically imports into the system without you guys having to do anything. You will not have to change any of these filters as long as you never change them, because they will automatically be set where they're supposed to be set when you enter into here. However, if you do change them for some reason, you'll need to go back and reset your filters so that way you can see the information that is pertinent. Once your filters are checked, you can simply navigate to the Task tab and then select Next. Feel free to navigate to the View and deselect Menu and To Do to give yourself more screen to work with. You'll notice that you have multiple invoices the first time you log in that will show you all of the different Reinhart orders that have automatically been imported into your system. These are imported on the same day that you receive the delivery. They could be there prior to receiving the delivery, or it may be a few hours after you receive the delivery once Reinhart sends these invoices over. The top level of the invoice, which we'll just work with the first one, which is highlighted in blue, has different categories that I'll talk about which each one is. The first one is the status, and the status typically when it comes through will say accepted. The next will show the vendor of the B2B. Right now, as I said, the only ones we work with are Reinhart. And then it will show the invoice date as well as the invoice number. You will want to ensure that the invoice date and the invoice number match the invoice date and invoice number on the paper invoice that you receive from Reinhart. It will also show the control amount. This dollar amount should also match the total amount on your paper invoice from Reinhart. Finally, you will have the vendor global code, which will typically be Reinhart, the vendor branch ID, which is associated with Reinhart in our system, as well as the vendor unit ID, which helps us associate this with Reinhart. Finally, if there is any errors in importing this particular invoice, it will show up under the last error column. Typically, you'll see unclassified or too old or error. This is what this will typically be. This means everything came through fine. From time to time, you will see that this will say that there is a unlinked item in Data Central. And what this means is that there is an item in your order that has been ordered in the system for the very first time and is not linked to anything in the master items list that Shauna and I build. If you receive that error, you will not be able to save your invoice. But if you shoot your administrator an email, meaning either I or Shauna, then we will be able to go and quickly take care of this for you and have this up and running for you within a matter of moments, so you're able to accept your order. When you receive this screen, next you'll go to Task and then hit Next. By hitting next, it's going to bring up the details of that vendor. We know that we're in the purchase orders screen now because if we look at the steps, step 1, start, step 2, B2B documents, and step 3, purchase orders, it tells us we're actually in the purchase orders at this point. This is the step that you need to be in order to save your purchase order and generate an invoice. Again, it's going to show you similar details. It's going to show you the vendor, the order number that's associated from the purchase order with Reinhart, which has a combination of the store number as well as physical date that matches the date with a -1 behind it. This is what makes each purchase order unique. Then you have a delivery date. And then very important is the status. The status should always show up as shipped. And once we've worked through this process, we will convert the status from shipped to invoiced. And that is the process that we're going to work through here momentarily. Again, you have the invoice number. The original amount is tied to the suggested order feature. Reinhart has the ability to receive orders from Data Central, where we can actually go into Data Central, place the order, and send it directly to Reinhart, skipping the tracks program. In the future, when you're trained to use this program, the original amount of the order you placed will show up here. So the shipped amount that Reinhart sends you shows up here. This should match the invoice that you have received, the paper invoice. And then once you have converted the status from shipped to invoiced, the receipt amount will then show up and appear here, as well as the approval date. And if you placed your order through Data Central to Reinhart, the order date and acknowledgement date would have shown up here. You also have the received date. This is the date that this product was received in the system at your restaurant from Reinhart. And then there's the invoiced date and the comment. And I will come back around to these. In order to properly receive a Reinhart order, you're going to highlight that particular order blue, navigate to the Task tab, and select Modify. At this point, it will bring and create an actual invoice for you that will have your order number, your invoice number, your order date, invoice date, the status of the invoice, and the delivery date, and then the detail of your actual receipt down here at the bottom. In the detail, it will show you the item, it will show you the item code, the unit of measure, the quantity in which you received, as well as the cost of that particular item. Again, it will show you the receipt details of the unit of measure, the quantity of which you have received, the cost, and the extended cost. Some items do have tax included on them, such as some paper products. So you will notice that there will be an extended cost as well as an additional tax. The tax that totals down here at the bottom also is included in this total amount here. So again, you're just validating that this amount matches your actual paper invoice that you've received. Once you've reviewed your invoice, you will then navigate to the Actions button under the Task tab and select Save PO or Purchase Order and Generate Invoice. You will receive a message that says, are you sure you want to generate an invoice and possible credits for the selected purchase order? If you're sure that this is the step you want to perform, you will select yes. If you do not, you will select no. We will select yes to receive this. At that point, you will notice that the invoice is converted in the status column from shipped to invoiced, as well as the receipt amount has now been imported along with the invoice date. At this point, you have completed receiving a Reinhart order. Okay, so we will go ahead and receive the remaining 3 invoices. In order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and close the program out, bring back my menu and to do, and I will close out of the Reinhart. And I will show you the Reinhart process on these final 3 invoices. So on the date that you receive your actual invoice, you will navigate to the Enter and Approve Daily Invoices activity. Select the Reinhart orders. Select Next. If you don't see anything here, keep in mind that you're only in number 2 B2B documents and you need to be in purchase orders. So you navigate to Task and select Next, and then your invoices will appear. Your job is to convert the status from shipped to invoiced. So we'll navigate to the next invoice that is shipped, highlight that invoice, go to Task, select Modify, go to Actions. We're going to make sure that our totals match and that our invoice numbers match. Navigate to Actions, Save PO, and Generate Invoice. And you can see the status has moved from shipped to invoiced. We can then move to the next invoice, navigate to Task, select Modify, ensure our invoice number and our total invoice matches the paper invoice. Navigate to Actions, Save PO, and Generate Invoice. Select the final invoice that's shipped. Navigate to Task, select Modify. Navigate, ensure that your invoice number as well as the total on the invoice match your paper invoice. Navigate to Task, select Actions, and Save PO and Generate Invoice. At this point, you have completed accepting all Reinhart orders into your system. And as we navigate into the next step, which is to ensure that all invoices have been received, which is what we'll work on here momentarily, you'll notice that when I open this step and I navigate to the next screen, that all of my Reinhart orders have been imported and show as approved. That concludes receiving a Reinhart invoice. Okay, now I'm going to move on to purchases. Purchases are also found under Enter and Approve Daily Invoices, and all purchases will be found under Step 2. Currently, the only purchases that we are entering are those purchases of items that you currently perform inventory on. So once you have navigated to the purchases, you'll receive your filter screen. In your filter screen, you're going to want to make sure that you have all documents checked on these 3 tabs. And under this screen, you do not need to change anything. You are welcome to change it to all documents, but the filter for new is fine as well with the unchecked Review B2B and Force B2B import. Once you have validated that these 3 boxes have all documents checked, you can then navigate to your task and select Next. You will notice that any documents or any invoices that have already been approved and entered into the system will then appear. You then have the ability to enter in additional invoices. So I will use the example of a B&J invoice. In order to add a new invoice, you simply navigate to the Task tab and select Add. This brings up a filter box that allows you to then choose the vendor that you want to add. So we'll choose B&J. The purchasing type will almost always be regular unless you're actually entering a credit in. You should never enter a Reinhart credit into here because you will receive the Reinhart credits electronically. The create mode will always be create empty. And then the document number will be the actual invoice number that is on the document. Please note that this document needs to be entered exactly as the document states, even if it starts with a 0 or has letters in that particular document. In order to make that document unique to your store, since some vendors reuse invoice numbers, you will then add a dash along with today's date that you're receiving that particular document. So that way the invoice number would then be the actual invoice and document number that's on the physical paper invoice, as well as a dash and then today's date. This will make that document unique and allow for our accounting software as well as Data Central to always receive the same the document number that is associated with that particular vendor. You do not need to enter any information into the grayed out sections. You will then enter the document date. It is important that the document date matches the date that you received the invoice on or the product on, as well as the accounting date, as well as the date that you put behind the document number. All three of these need to match. It is not necessary to put a due date. However, if you choose to, please select the same date as the document date and the accounting date, unless there is a physical due date on the invoice you are entering. Finally, you will enter the total amount that is on that document. Once you have entered all of this information, you will then select OK, and this will create an invoice. It will show you the vendor that you've entered, as well as the document number, the accounting date, the due date, and the document date, and that this particular document is regular or credit, depending on what you chose. The control amount is the total amount due on the document, and you will notice that this amount appears in a salmon color until the detail to match this amount is filled in down in the purchase details. In order to fill in the purchase details, you will navigate to DC item column, and you will find the particular item that you have received. In this case, it is buns. Then you will select the unit of measure of how you have received those. So we received buns by the dozen, and then you will select the quantity of buns that you have received, as well as the cost that matches the unit of measure. That will create an extended cost, and as you can see, by creating an extended cost that matches my control amount is no longer the salmon color and it has converted to white. I can then navigate to my task tab and select OK. At this point, I have created a new invoice that has a vendor associated with it, a purchasing type, document number, document date, accounting date, control amount. It will show that by having a check in the box that the control amount matches the actual document information, and the final step is to approve the document. I can navigate up to task and select the approve tab. It will ask me if I'm sure I want to approve the selected document. By selecting no, it will not approve this document. By selecting yes, it will approve this document. Once I have approved my document, I have completed my purchase. Once you have completed entering in all of your purchase orders, you can navigate to task and then close out of this particular activity. You will be asked if you've made any changes, if you want to cancel the changes. At this point, you will either choose no, you don't want to cancel changes, or that yes, you do. The final steps of purchasing purchasing are step 3 is a reminder to ensure that every order must be checked in to ensure proper quantity versus invoice, quality, freshness, damaged goods, and proper temperature. The order then must be put away in the proper location, dated, rotated, and grocery store fronted. It is important that every item has a location and that the location stays consistent in order for your inventory purposes to remain as easy as possible. Again, ensure that all invoices are entered into Data Central. If there are questions on how to code a invoice, for the time being, you will continue to code your paper invoices. You can access this particular document. At this point, this document will open and it will walk you through the receiving process as far as how to properly code, what the codes are, along with the different expense codes that go along with that, and a picture example of a Reinhart order properly coded. This concludes the purchasing portion. So at this point, we've discussed how to receive Reinhart orders through purchase orders and our regular purchases of all of our other items that we may purchase, and discussed how to find those items under the to-do daily activities. You also have access under the menu in purchasing and inventory to directly access purchase orders, which will take you directly into the purchase orders activity. And you have access under the to-do to take you directly into the purchases. You may enter this activity either through the daily activities under enter and approve daily invoices and or the menu of purchase inventory. This concludes our purchase order and purchases training activity.